what's your name?
Mohammed.
Mohammed. No, no worries, aye, no worries.
I know. Be right with you.
Cool. Oh, you're going to have a smoke if you want, man.
No, I'll just put it back. Alright.
Well, Mohammed, I'm Dale. Pleasure to meet you, buddy. Are you a student up here?
Yes, I'm a student.
Can I ask you what you're studying? Mechanical engineering. That's funny. The last guy we spoke to was the exact same. He's probably in your class.
Probably.
Aye.
We just had a lab. We're coming down now.
Ah, right, okay. What I'm actually doing is I'm investigating some scientific, claims and stuff that are made about the world we live in.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you up right now, I deny that the Earth's a sphere. Can I ask you what your initial thought is about that?
So you're a flat earther then?
Ah, I knew you were going to say that. What do you mean by flat earther?
You believe that we live on a flat planet and
Flat planet?
not a spherical globe.
So you think that I'm somebody who believes that there's a disk still within the heliocentric cosmology of vacuum of space, blah blah blah. That's not me, but can I ask you where you get
Because
that?
that's the insinuation of anyone who doesn't believe that.
And that's based on propaganda through media?
Exactly.
So you understand that it is propaganda?
It is propaganda.
So-
So from both sides.
Well, of course there's propaganda from anybody, but for me I'm always trying to get to the honesty and the truth of the matter. So I investigate things through a scientific inquiry. Can I ask you what your understanding of science is? How would you define science?
I'd say science is the representation of mathematical truths that we can experiment throughout our experience, both with previous and theoretical substances.
So based in substance then?
Yes.
So you would agree with me, I'm a man of practicality. For
course.
me, science means practical reference. So we need stuff, things that we can quantify.
Yep.
And there's a difference between that, because that's the natural sciences, which is physics, chemistry, biology, you would agree?
Yep.
Then you said about mathematical truths. Mathematics is a formal science, it's a language. So it has no
Exactly.
basis in reality, you would agree with that?
But I would say that if we were to disregard the mathematics, because we are fortunate that we both speak English.
Yeah.
So that's how we communicate.
Yes.
But all around the globe, that isn't always the truth.
Yeah.
So what's the uniform language? You just said it, mathematics.
No, the uniform language for me is practicality. So I do
But
not-
how do you express practicality?
Well, I can demonstrate. If I get that bicycle right now, and I demonstrate the wheel, I demonstrate the mechanics, the cogs, I don't need language in order for you to understand that.
Okay.
Okay, so I agree with you in part though that mathematics can be a useful language, but it must be ascribed to some physical substance that we can demonstrate and we can quantify. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, but I think in that sense you disregard a lot of the macro and microscopic sciences that demonstration might not be very articulate of, if you get what I mean. So say in terms of a bike, it's very easy to articulate about and to demonstrate.
Yeah.
But if I'm gonna go atomic or sometimes subatomic,
Which is theoretical.
it is theoretical, but it is proven.
What I
as
mean
well.
by theoretical, sorry, I mean conceptual.
Conceptual. I get it.
So you understand there's a difference between conceptual mathematics and practical mathematics.
I get it.
Right, so that's, as long as we understand that distinction, now, as far as I'm concerned, the globular Earth model is based on conceptual mathematics and not on practical mathematics, because I can demonstrate that over and over. Like, on the globular Earth, you have to postulate that there is no such thing as level water,
Okay.
that it's curved.
Okay.
That's conceptual, and it can be
Up to a certain depth.
and it can be described conceptually by mathematics of how it can behave like that.
Okay.
Whereas in reality, I could not demonstrate that to you practically.
No, see, that's what I mean. On a macro level, you can, if you take enough data.
Well, what's the data that you would take?
You would need to take in the density of water, for starters. You need to take in the density of water. But the problem is when we do such data, there are some prerequisitions that are agreed upon that someone like yourself might say, hey, this is something that I might not agree upon that you have to prove to me. Honestly, I don't have the knowledge right now because you seem like a very well-informed person.
Well, that's a great, because that's what I'm trying to capture, is honesty here.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to highlight is that there's a real lack of reasoning
Yes.
that can be articulated to me from academia, students, of why they believe what they believe. Would you agree that a lot of it is taken on consensus
It is taken on consensus.
and an appeal to an authority?
See, but when you talk about consensus, when you come to the heart of it, it's really whether you trust the people who came up with it or not.
Yeah. So it's about faith.
It is about faith,
Yeah.
in a sense. It is about faith.
And do you think faith has a place in objective inquiry?
No.
Of course.
No,
So that's what I'm trying to highlight. You know, that so many people that we speak to, they come up against a void with their reasoning when I try and ask them about why they would believe and postulate that the Earth is a sphere. So, you know, it's the same with yourself. If I asked you the question, you believe it's a sphere?
It's because that's what I was taught. But when I compare the research of both sides, honestly, I don't have it in front of me, and I'm not very articulate about it right now.
Yep.
But when I compare the research of both sides, one side made more sense to me than the other. Like, I tried to come with it with some objectivity. Obviously, I was biased because of my teaching of the Earth being a sphere.
Yeah.
I appreciate where you're coming from, because it's hard to come from a position against everyone else.
Yeah.
And you will be labeled as a propagandist in most situations.
Lunatic, fantasist.
Exactly. It's not wrong to question something.
No.
Because questioning something, it'll either prove it wrong or prove it right.
So see, that's absolutely wonderful, and I love your reasoning there. So that's one of the things that I want to highlight as well. You know, just as you understand, there's a huge wave of propaganda in regards to people like myself.
Trust me, there's a huge wave of propaganda regarding people like myself as well.
Of course, and I spoke about this last week on one of my podcasts. It's funny you say that. You know, I take it you're Muslim.
I am.
Yeah. So I was highlighting the absurdity of people and how they think based on propaganda.
Exactly.
So we understand that it's everywhere, and for me, it's a tool that's used to divide us and keep us at odds with each other. Whereas for me, this objective inquiry, there is no sides to be had. There's no subjectivity. There's no bias that should be involved in it. But what happens is that people like myself are ridiculed en masse by mainstream, by so-called, you know, scientific authorities. Do you think there's a you know, there must be a problem there? Because if it's really objective, why is propaganda ever being utilised?
That's a good question. If it's really it's not truly 100% objective. I'd say that, like, there are some things that are scientifically influenced by politics, scientifically influenced by
So do you not think that the
economics.
area of the Earth that we think we know would be influenced?
But that's the thing. That's where me and you part ways. I don't conceptually see why they would lie about something like that.
What
Like,
about, what about limited resources? What about the possibility that there's more land than what we've been told there is? You don't think that would be justified?
So you're saying that the Earth being represented as something other than a sphere will affect its
Yeah,
innate volume?
because let me reason with you a wee bit,
Okay.
right? An animal, you understand an animal, if I want to farm, I can put a perimeter fence around the animals. The animals get to that barrier, they see there's a barrier, they just go back.
Okay.
Human beings are different. If you put a physical barrier in front of a human
They try
being,
to jump over it.
they're going to go over it. Now, psychologically, a sphere Earth is a barrier, but you're in a void, there is nowhere else to go. So right there and then you quash any inquiry into the possibility that there may be other things existing out there. Can you see that?
I can see what you mean, but then you would be, I think, undermining the technology that we have developed and that we have sustained, to say that we have not observed the Earth as a whole, if you get what I mean.
I deny that totally.
So you're saying that we have not observed the Earth.
Because here's the
as a
thing,
whole.
physics will demonstrate this simple claim to me. Now, the claim is that the Earth, as a pressurised environment, exists within a medium that's a vacuum. So that means we've got a high pressure system adjacent to a non-pressurised low pressure system with no solid barrier. Now, physics will demonstrate to me that claim is absolutely ridiculous, because in order to have pressure in the first place, you need a container. Now, if I want to have a high pressure and a low pressure, I must have a solid membrane between the two. If not, instant equilibrium will take effect, which means the high...
What results from that? What results from instant equilibrium taking place?
Well, it's equilibrium, the pressure equalises.
Yes.
Yep. That can't go. If they're telling us we're in an infinite void, a vacuum, and we're on this tiny small area with a pressurised gaseous environment, and the gases know it instantly dissipate.
Okay, let's build the basis here. How do you think the Earth came to place? Are you a believer in the Big Bang Theory?
No. I'm not a believer in anything. I don't have beliefs.
You don't have beliefs.
I try and eradicate, especially when it comes to objectivity. There's no need for me to have a belief in something objective.
Okay, so how would you say that
That's one of the problems, because look at it again. science, objective inquiry should not be offering us existential stories, whereas the science and mainstream media just now is offering us an existential story.
I agree with that. But don't you believe that consensus can be reached on any substance?
With practicality.
With practicality.
Without practicality, no, it's ambiguous.
So when I say belief, I mean agree on a consensus, basically. That's what I mean by belief.
Well, consensus would have to be based on, so like, a wheel. Somebody makes a claim they've invented this thing called the wheel. Okay, I hear that. Everybody's saying so,
you haven't seen it
but
yet.
I've never experienced it. Oh no, I've experienced the wheel. Oh right, okay, we have the practical reference. Bending standing bodies of water, consensus. Where's the demonstration? I don't have one. The physical substance shows me that that's an impossibility. So where do I believe the image that I see on my TV in consensus, or do I go with my experience of reality?
But don't you think that your experience of reality is so minuscule to the earth itself that you shouldn't, and not shouldn't is not a good word to use here, that you couldn't build an objective truth from your life experience alone?
No, because there's things that I don't know everything.
Exactly.
But when I put my attention to something, I have a set of principles, a set of standards. So when we're talking objectivity, I must have the practical reference, because if I don't have the practical reference, I'm just hearing words, language. And that's not good enough for somebody like me.
One of the things that most honestly made me, I'd still use the word believe that the earth is a sphere, is the physical reconstructions that they used, where something that is so massive as the earth, over time it will collapse into a spherical object through its own density.
But that's conceptual again.
That's conceptual. That was reconstructed through smaller models of the earth.
But here's the thing: when we talk about model, when you say model, when I talk about models, I talk about scale representations.
Yes.
So that's why the globular Earth model is a plastic toy.
Yeah, obviously.
So if I asked you to demonstrate, okay, get me a vacuum, get me a rock, put water in the rock, have air pressure clinging to the rock and this bending water in a vacuum, could you demonstrate that?
No.
So it's no scalable.
I couldn't. I don't know if science is good, to be honest.
I've looked.
I don't know.
You don't need to take my word on it, but they can't. It's impossible. It's ridiculous. Just saying it sounds ridiculous. So if it's not scalable, i.e. you can represent it as it actually is using the same substances, there's something wrong, because everything else can be scaled. If it's real, you can scale it and you can demonstrate it.
Well, what would your response be about all the other physical, mechanical, and kind of engineering developments and innovations that came to and are used these days that were built off the basis of the Earth being a sphere? Like, for example, there are some bridges where one side of the bridge is built higher than another side of the bridge to account for the Earth's sphere.
I know why that is. Now, when we talk about engineering uses Euclidean planar geometry.
Okay.
You know that?
Yeah.
So Euclidean geometry does not apply to a curved surface. You need non-Euclidean geometry to apply it to other concepts. So Euclidean geometry is what we use. Planar. It doesn't work on a curved surface. And the aspect of a bridge, when we construct, we build with plumbs and levels, and we build things square. You understand that?
Yeah.
Now a bridge sometimes is built like this because it's about supporting the load. It's not about the curve of it. If you look at a bridge, it's like that with an arch, the water underneath it.
But it's not about the arc, it's about the difference in heights.
I don't know. The difference in height's only because of the topography on the other side. But
What causes that topography?
well, the lower land to the higher land. That's the only thing. It's nothing to do with curvature.
Okay.
Because as I say, when you build a bridge, you use Euclidean geometry. Euclidean geometry does not apply to a curved surface.
Okay.
So there are no building bridges based on the Earth being a sphere. They're building bridges based on the Earth being a plane. And it's there, you can investigate that for yourself.
Okay. As I've said, I'm not very well versed on this substance. I do know a video of someone who's a bit more enriched. Do you mind me not showing you the video? Link, Vsauce.
I've already...
You've seen it, obviously.
I'm going to say, I don't know Vsauce personally, so I'm not talking personal, but Vsauce is intellectually dishonest. He's a moron. Because he continually uses fallacious logic, fallacious reasoning. He uses sophistry. These guys will never show you any practical references. There is no demonstration of physical substance from any of them. The curvature of the Earth would be measurable. Nobody can measure the curvature there because it doesn't exist. When we do,
I don't know about that, to be honest.
well, let me give you an example, right?
Because I think it has a measure. I can be wrong.
Let me offer you something. They say that the Earth is 24,000 miles in circumference. This is the mainstream model, okay? Which means there's a curvature rate of 8 inches per mile squared. So it's 8 inches for the first mile, and then it squares because it's an exponential curve.
Okay.
Now, when you look
Because
at,
it's not a perfect sphere.
well, it's an oblate spheroid, but the mathematics that NASA offer
Yeah.
you is what I've just stated. You can check that for yourself. Now, that dictates that there must be measurable curvature. So if I give you an example of the west coast of Scotland here, we can go and we can identify two land masses with a distance of 30 miles between them, give or take a couple of miles. There must be 350 feet of deviation from one to the other, which means if you start here, it must deviate in its elevation to 350 feet to the next one, because that's the drop from one point to the other. Do you understand?
But that would I'm sorry. That would suggest that there's a uniform curvature to the Earth.
No, but it is a the Earth's no morphing. It's a geometric fixed sphere. That's what they're claiming, right? So based on that geometry, it must have measurability. Quantify it. You must be able to quantify it. So if we do an example like that, and I put a straight edge up to the horizon between those 2 points, there is no deviation in elevation. These 2 points are both on the same level as each other. So something's wrong, because reality has shown me that it's no there. So where do I go from that? You know, so I mean,
see, I'm sorry, because I need to go.
No worries.
But if I were to reach a consensus, I would disagree with you on the context.
Yeah.
I mean, you are obviously very highly researched and more well versed in this subject than I am.
Yeah.
I would admit you know 10 times what I don't know.
Yeah.
You know in the subject more than I'm ever gonna forget. But anyway, you're gonna forget in the subject more than I'm ever gonna forget.
This is a great point, because that's what we're highlighting. This is academia. And people like yourself, you're honest and you're humble enough to admit what you know and what you don't know. Some people are egotistical.
Obviously.
And this is what we're trying to highlight.
Exactly.
People believe these things, and academia is not teaching, educating people properly with the skills to inquire and to investigate.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, I would agree on a general point, maybe possibly on this point if I research more and I'm more well versed, and honestly if I cared more about it. I don't care too much about it. I respect your enthusiasm about it and how much you research about it, but I personally don't care about it.
Honesty's brilliant.
So, but I respect the general approach.
Yeah.
I respect the general approach and how you're questioning something that is, in general, there's a consensus about it. Because that's what I did, honestly, with my own religion.
Yeah.
For a while, I felt that I had a distance from it because I had disassociated intellectualism from faith.
Yeah.
And I realized that was wrong.
Yeah.
It was not until I was able to question my religion that I grew closer to it.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people thought that it might distance me apart.
Yeah.
So I appreciate where you're coming from in terms of questioning. You should question everything, not as a way to ridicule it, as a way to actually seek information.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Well said.
Anyway, I've appreciated it.
Real pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, buddy.
See ya. What's your podcast, by the way?
It's Beyond the Imaginary Curve.
Are you on YouTube? Or?
Yes, I'm getting on YouTube. You can see I've been here so many times. So this is what we're trying to open up an investigation and have this discussion maybe on a larger scale, you know?
Whatever the context is, if it's within the confines of morality and respect, I don't care what you discuss.
Exactly.
I don't care what you discuss.
Hopefully, I wish everybody was...
Yeah, I wish everybody from both sides of any aisle were like that.
Exactly.
But that's why we don't ever come to any... We can even, like, today I have agreed to disagree with you.
Yeah.
But I've respected what you've come forth
Because
with.
you're a human being.
Exactly.
I have compassion for you, you probably the same for me.
Obviously.
Worst case scenario, I would hold my hand out to help you.
Yeah.
You only want to have love, respect,
Exactly.
appreciation, same for your family, same for the people around you, and all this.
And intellectual compassion.
Exactly.
Like, you should respect that someone's coming from somewhere else. Sometimes people just come about it to cause propaganda, whether it's from your side of the aisle or for the other.
Of course.
But in general, the consensus should be that any point of view with sufficient research should be taken.
Exactly.
Whether it's plausible, impossible, or otherwise.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. You take care of yourself.
Have a nice day.
You too. Keep that running. that there's just a perfect example of how, for me, it should be done. And there's nothing the matter with that. So again, displaying that, all this online, trolling and abuse and ridicule and trying to, intimidate people and gaslight them. There's no need for any of that. As you can see here, there is people in the world who are willing to have an open discussion with you, and not everybody's a troll from online. Again, it's not going to happen online. The only way we're ever going to get any of this resolved is by having real life interactions in places like this. And who knows, these younger generations, as you can see there, the articulation, the humility, the boy being humble, and we've seen that from other people here today as well. So that for me is what's important and hugely valuable. It makes this worthwhile for me when I can experience people like that, because it just blows away this division that's constantly pummeled at us, that we should be divided and we should stand against everybody else. Fuck that, let's just have the chats. Lewis, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Have you guys heard of flat earthers?
No.
You've never heard of flat earthers? People who refuse the globe earth?
Yeah.
And will say that the earth's
Oh,
flat.
yeah, say the yeah.
So you've seen that on social media, on mainstream media?
Maybe not on media, but I've heard of it before.
You've heard of it before?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
It's quite an American idea, is it not?
I think so.
I've only heard it through like a podcast or something from like an American.
Yeah. But I'm a person who denies that the earth's a sphere.
Okay.
Would you think that was a crackpot?
Well, I'd say there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that the world is a sphere.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I take it, I was just going to assume that you both believe that it is a sphere.
Yeah.
If I asked each of you individually, what would your reasons be for saying that the earth is a sphere?
Well, the pictures from space.
Pictures from space?
Yeah.
Like yourself, pictures from space. Do you think that's a proper, basis to have faith in something or believe something true, to see it?
Well, I believe scientific evidence.
How would you define science?
Science, I would say, is logical and well researched.
Would you say it was based on practicality?
We could almost get a
Like-
mix of logic and I think it's like the research into it. I don't think it's just they're making it up from the top of their heads. I think there's been a lot of research they've looked into it. There's evidence to suggest their theories are true. I don't think it's just...
So you would go by a consensus, which is again kind of faith-based. You've not properly looked at it yourself.
Yes.
So what we're trying to highlight is the amount of faith that people have in certain things, and whether it's a real objective inquiry they've actually went through to maintain the belief. Somebody like myself, if I was like you, I just assumed what I was told was correct. Then I started to apply logic, reason, scientific inquiry, and I failed to maintain the belief that the Earth was a sphere. But that...
What makes you think it's a square? Or what do you think it is?
I think it's demonstrably a level plane. It's demonstrably level. When you
go to the top of the mountain, you can see that it's curved. You can see the world is curved.
It's a possibility. And if you go to the mainstream narrative, you heard of Neil deGrasse Tyson, the coloured guy, the main spokesperson for NASA. Well, he's been involved in this type of discussion. He's categorically stated, look, people that are claiming they can see the Earth's curvature from aeroplanes or up a mountain are wrong, because it's in their model, it's an impossibility. You have to be much higher before you would start to see any discernible curvature. So
I wouldn't agree with that. I definitely think you can see it.
You think you can see it? Again, do you think seeing something or thinking you see something is a proper scientific quantification of something?
Well, I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God, but some people do believe in God, but that's because I feel like I've not got enough
Well, that's
research.
a metaphysical question.
But then with that, I do think I can see a curve, and I do believe that there's evidence to prove that the world's a sphere.
Well, just to demonstrate something for you based on vision, right, because it's a different geometry to the actual world.
But why would they lie and say it's a sphere?
Can I just make the point quick? So when we look along that street right now, the people are getting smaller, the trees are getting smaller,
Yeah.
but physically that's not really happening, is it? You understand that's just a property of your vision.
Yeah.
So out in the real world, that's not the way the real world is.
Yes.
So your eyes are a separate issue. So just seeing something, like if we had no other basis of reference and we just appeared here on Earth and say, what size is that person down there? You would say, well, that size. But until we get to them and we can quantify them and we realise that we're 5 to 10 or whatever. So purely visible phenomena doesn't classify anything, it doesn't define anything. We have to have an understanding three-dimensionally so we can move around an object in three dimensions.
Why do you think that they would lie to us and say it's a sphere if it's a square? What difference does that
Well,
make to in the
I could postulate different reasons, but my main point just now is it's like if we go to a murder scene and we see a dead body, we don't say it never happened because we don't know why. We have to have an investigation into it. So all I'm doing is addressing the supposed evidences and the supposed proofs that have been postulated to me, and they don't stack up because there is nothing to quantify curvature of Earth. Every practical reference shows me that the Earth's a level plane. The only place I can witness the Earth's curvature is on a TV screen.
Well, but the thing is, see if you're really close to something. So see if you're really close up to a ball,
Yeah.
you can only see it once you've taken a step back.
Yeah.
So if you're really close, you're in the world, you're not going to be able to see it from here, are you?
Well,
So
that's
you'll
right.
need to go out into space, and that's what they've done, and they've seen that it's a sphere.
Well, that's other people that are saying that, showing you your
Why,
TV screen.
why would they lie about it?
But again,
What reason would they have to lie?
But again, you're jumping to asking for motives, and what I'm trying to do is show an investigation into how individuals relate to each other by language and what they actually believe and why they believe it. So far, you've agreed that you take it on consensus, you take it on faith, you believe that people are going to some reference frame that you've never witnessed. That's not your experience, you've seen it on the TV, because unless you've witnessed it yourself, you've seen it on the TV screen, am I correct?
I've never seen the Queen before, but I know she exists because she's on the TV.
Well, that's something that you could go and you could see the Queen in reality. Can you access space?
Well, if I was really interested, I would.
Good.
Come on, that's
They say in the history of space travel, only 500 people have ever been to space. That's a really small minority in comparison to the population.
But the thing is, see if you get a telescope or something, you can probably see that the other planets are spheres as well.
But that's fallacious reasoning. That's like saying, well, when I want to measure your living room floor to lay a carpet, I don't look at a light bulb, because the light bulb doesn't define the floor. That's the same. Nothing up there defines the shape of the Earth. If I ask the question, what's the dimensions of Earth, and you start looking up there, I'm going to go, I think you need some medication.
Why would they say, right?
Well, let me try and reason with you, right? So, just to show you that, if I was to offer you something on my reasoning of why I think the Earth's a level plane, would you be willing to look at it?
Well,
I can use that bottle right now, can I just use that? There's a substance in there, it's called water.
yeah.
If I asked you to describe the surface of that right now, how would you describe it? If I increased it to a bath size, how would you describe the surface? If we went to the swimming pool, how would you describe the surface? If we went to the lake, how would you describe the surface? With waves. If we went to the ocean, how would you describe the surface? But still level.
Yeah, because of gravity.
So at what point does it curve?
But gravity holds it in.
What does that mean?
Gravity is the force that pulls everything into the surface, and that's why we are round.
What does pull mean?
Well, I've not done physics in a long time, so I can't really remember.
Well,
but
I can tell you that pull as a function doesn't exist. The only
a gravitational pull.
pull doesn't exist.
You don't believe in that?
Pull's not a thing.
So do you think the world will come to an end and you fall off the side of it?
No.
Why not?
Because I've not investigated it fully.
Do you think that it's an absolute endless?
It could be an enclosed system.
So
It could be,
why can
there
you
could
believe
be,
that, but you can't believe that it's a
I
circle?
don't have beliefs. You're asserting that that's my belief.
Right.
What I'm saying to you is I've not investigated that enough. I'm investigating what the claims are right now,
Okay.
and those claims don't stack up in reality. There's nothing to demonstrate that the Earth's a sphere.
Well, there is actually a lot of scientific evidence to prove that it is.
Show me one.
Well, right now I need to get to work, but
But can you see that? Can you see? I don't want to be
Like,
confrontational, but you're basing things on your ego, right?
No,
and what you
well,
constantly keep
I
doing.
did physics in that 5 level, and it all kind of made sense. And I don't understand why people would go to such lengths to just make up a load of rubbish.
So it's incredulity then, just because you don't understand why it would happen, it didn't happen.
Well, I believe that people are actually interested in it and they've investigated it and believe that they're right.
So
I feel
what's the difference then? Because I'm a man that you can relate to right now, and I say it's not a sphere, it's a level plane, demonstrably, scientifically provable, but it is a level plane. You would take the word of people you've never met, a consensus, something you've seen on the TV screen, it's all based in language, where I can offer you practical reference to show you.
There's a lot of scientific, well, psychology, and there's a lot of research to prove that certain behaviours are because of something else, and just because I didn't take part in those research cases doesn't mean that I don't think they're true, because there's a lot of people that have gone into that and have researched into that, and that's why I believe it's
The
true.
psychology is a metaphysical thing. I'm talking purely physics.
Right.
So I'm not talking about metaphysics, psychology, consensus.
Yeah, but there's also been a lot of research into that, like Isaac Newton he came up with the concept of gravity, and
That is a concept.
yeah,
That's just a concept.
yeah, nothing is science. It's not a fact, but I believe it to be true.
You believe it?
Because I believe that they've put a lot of research into that, and I don't believe that they can just come up that from the top of their head. I think there's a lot of people that have investigated it. And
So what happens when people start from
do you think?
Well, what happens when people start from a bias, right, and then they start getting funding, and the funding comes in and people become dependent on that, and that continues, and
Well,
it
that's
gets bigger
called
and
a
bigger and bigger and
publication
bigger.
bias. So that's what we did that as well. So I understand your point, but also why do you think that things fall to the ground? Why do you think that is?
Well, I can postulate and make various different things, but again,
Do you think that's because of gravity?
no, but again, the way things fall and why they fall do not define the Earth. It's a different question. The question I'm asking is, what's the dimensions of the Earth? And how do we establish that? So far people say up there how things fall, and I'm like, I want to measure the floor. I don't care about all this up here.
I mean, it's too close.
Too close. So if I say to you, ever
Well,
heard?
everything in perspective.
No.
We're too close to be able to see the perspective.
That's just a cop out. So if I say to you, you ever heard of Euclid of Alexandria?
No.
Euclidean geometry? Ever heard of Euclidean geometry? Planar geometry, it's like all these things are based on that. Parallel lines never intersect, they always remain parallel.
You can say that about anything just because you've not researched it yourself that it may not be true. You can say that about anything.
What does research mean?
Research means that a lot of people have gone into it, had a look at something.
So if I read something that somebody else has postulated, I should then be able to go to reality and display that in reality for myself. There I can either falsify or verify the claim that's being made. So that's what I'm saying. The globular Earth claims, I take everything that all these supposed papers and Newtons and yada yada, I go to reality shows me something different.
Right.
Reality's not telling me lies. Human beings are telling me lies, no reality.
Okay.
So the whole point is just to highlight that reality is there to be investigated. People like yourself believe in consensus, believe in authority, and it's faith-based. That's purely the point I'm trying to highlight here, because it's not based on your own reasoning through your own practical understanding.
Okay.
Because we've established that through this conversation. You can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you would agree.
The Earth's flat.
No, that you believe the Earth's a sphere based on consensus, hearsay.
I believe that if I went into space, I would see that the Earth is a circle.
What's the point?
Yeah.
It's not annoying.
But so you think you know that the Earth is flat?
That's demonstrably level. It's demonstrably level. What shape's the horizon?
Flat.
When you elevate up, where's the horizon? At your eye level. Doesn't it drop?
I know, but that's just because that's from where you can see it. If I was in a box and all I could see was blackness, that doesn't mean that all around me is blackness. That just means that I'm in a certain place at a certain time. So
It's very obvious that you just want to maintain your belief, and that's fine. I'm not here to convert you.
Okay.
I'm just here to display how conversations go, because that's all I'm looking for. We're trying to get the university open up to this. I think we should have the conversation, and we can lay everything at the table and see who actually has the demonstrable scientific facts and who has the religious hearsay, because the globular Earth is just sophistry, rhetoric. It has nothing practical, no measurement. The Earth's surface has never been measured as a curve, ever. We use Euclidean planar geometry in every aspect of life. That geometry does not apply to a curved surface, it only works on planes. So if that works, and we use it and it works in reality, the Earth can't be a sphere.
well, I don't know enough about it to be honest with you, but I still
But you're going to argue with it.
Yeah.
What does that say though?
That I'm quite set in my ways.
Yeah.
I believe authority. I trust authority.
Well, that's great, because that's what we're looking for, just the crux of the matter. You've got faith and you believe in the authority, which is the honesty. Are you the same, I take it? You just believe and you go along with it. I take it you don't think there's any relevance You don't think it matters?
I don't really care. If
Don't
it's,
really care.
if it's not a circle.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking to me. A real pleasure. Thank you very much. I know we never get a chance to speak because
No,
big
it's
egotist
fine.
here was too busy arguing.